My HOA fees tripled in just 18 months. It's for enhanced landscaping services, they claimed. But from my window, all I could see was dead grass where our community park used to be. I've lived in planned communities for 27 years. This didn't add up, so I started digging. Like you, I've always paid my dues without complaint. We all want nice neighborhoods. At first, the increase seemed reasonable, just $30 more per month. The newsletter mentioned rising costs and inflation. I didn't like it, but I understood. 6 months later, another notice, $50 more monthly for expanded landscape beautification. I sat at my kitchen table sighing as I adjusted my budget spreadsheet. Tom had taught me to track every dollar after he retired from the factory. When my statement showed $270 monthly fees, up from $90 when we bought our home, I'd had enough. Something wasn't right. One Sunday, I put on my walking shoes and took a stroll around the neighborhood. What I saw made me stop in my tracks. The entrance flowers were dead. The playground sat abandoned, not because kids didn't want to play, but because no parent would let their children near the broken equipment and trash. Janet from down the street waved me over. She'd twisted her ankle in a pothole that had been reported 3 times already. And those sprinklers I was supposedly paying for? The grass was so dry it crunched under my feet. Every dollar we paid was vanishing into thin air. I called Margaret at the management office the next morning. We'd served on the Christmas committee together years ago. Just standard increases, she said nervously. Take it up at the quarterly meeting. At that meeting, I sat through 17 minutes of rushed agenda items. When I finally stood to ask about our landscaping dollars, the board president, a man I'd never seen at a single community event, barely looked up. He pointed to a budget line labeled Community Maintenance $142,000 and called for the next item. That's when it got personal. I'm no detective. I taught high school English for 30 years, but Tom always said I was like a terrier with a bone when someone wasn't being straight with me. I started at the county records office. Our HOA's financial statements were public record. I requested those, plus all board meeting minutes from the past 2 years. When the documents arrived, I spread them across our dining table. My heart raced as I connected the dots. The HOA had signed a landscaping contract with Greenscape Solutions, LLC. Our community only has 1.8 acres of common areas, about 2 football fields, no itemized services, no competing bids. Something stank, and it wasn't just our unmowed grass. I called Mike, our neighbor's son, who runs his own landscaping business. What would you charge for our property? I asked. He nearly spit out his coffee when I told him our current rate for that size. Maybe $25,000 to $30,000 a year, tops. And that includes premium service. We were being robbed in broad daylight. The following weekend, I drove to Greenscape's business address. Instead of a proper office, I found myself staring at a UPS store in a strip mall. This wasn't incompetence, this was fraud. But what I discovered next made my blood run cold. After researching business registrations, I found that Greenscape Solutions was registered to Brian Hoffman. The name didn't register at first. Then it hit me. Brian was our HOA treasurer's brother-in-law, the same treasurer who had pushed hardest for our fee increases. Sitting in my car outside that UPS store, my hands shook with anger. They weren't just mismanaging our money, they were stealing it. From our retirement accounts, our fixed incomes, from hardworking people who trusted them. I needed help. I started small, coffee at my house. 8 neighbors showed up, curious about my vague invitation to discuss community concerns. As I showed them what I'd found, I watched faces change from curiosity to disbelief to outrage. They've been lying to our faces for years, said Ron from 2 doors down, his face reddening. One of the younger couples set up a private Facebook group. Within a week, our group grew to 78 members, over half the neighborhood. We formally petitioned for an emergency HOA meeting, citing a bylaw provision most board members probably assumed none of us had ever read. The night of the meeting, I felt my heart pounding as I walked into the community center. My nervousness vanished when I saw the room packed wall to wall. The Johnsons were there despite his Parkinson's. Eleanor sat up front, still grieving her husband but determined to participate. Even the young couples who struggled to make mortgage payments stood along the back. The board members looked stunned by the turnout. I took a deep breath and walked to the front with my presentation. I showed photos of our community 3 years ago, next to current images. The decline impossible to miss. I detailed the outrageous landscaping contract. I revealed the family connection between our treasurer and Greenscape. Then I dropped the bomb. Each household had overpaid approximately $3,200, money taken right out of our pockets. The room fell silent. Then Eleanor stood up, her voice quiet but steady. That $3,200, that's the money I've been saving to visit my grandchildren in Colorado. I haven't seen them in 3 years because I couldn't afford both the trip and these fees. Her words broke something loose in the room. Neighbors stood one after another, sharing how these inflated fees had hurt their families. The HOA president tried to adjourn, claiming we were being disruptive. But Frank, the retired police officer from Maple Street, moved to stand by the door, arms crossed. "Nobody's leaving until we get answers," he said. After 30 minutes of increasingly pointed questions, both the president and treasurer announced their resignations and hurried out a side door. We took back our community that night. The weeks that followed weren't easy, but they brought us together in ways I hadn't experienced since the block parties of the 90s. The remaining board members, clearly uninvolved in the scheme, worked with our newly formed community action group. We terminated the fraudulent contract immediately. The auditing firm we hired uncovered even more corruption. The landscaping contract was just the beginning. Years of financial mismanagement had drained our reserves. But with the corrupt elements gone, we began to heal. Monthly fees dropped back to $100. For the first time in years, we saw actual improvement. Fresh flowers appeared at our entrance, the plow ground was renovated, the walking paths were repaired so our seniors could exercise safely. That Christmas, holiday decorations brightened our community for the first time in 5 years. At the next annual meeting, my neighbors nominated me for financial oversight chair. Me, a 67-year-old retired English teacher who had never served on a board. Now, every contract goes through a transparent review. Every expense is documented online where all residents can see exactly where their money goes. And once a month, rain or shine, I personally walk the grounds with our new landscaping company. My friends, if your HOA fees are climbing while your neighborhood crumbles, your silence is their power. This is your home, your investment, your community. They counted on us staying quiet. We counted every dollar they took. Ask questions, demand answers, look at records, talk to your neighbors. Your retirement savings are funding someone else's luxury. Speak up or keep paying for their vacations. Their silence is strategy, yours is surrender. Don't wait until they've taken $3,200 from your pocket too. Has your HOA increased fees without showing results? Share your experience in the comments below.